Okay, I heard that. Hi, friends. My name's Kirsten. I'm an alcoholic. Um, it's actually really an honor to be invited to speak here. Stephen, I met at the beginning of COVID, and I had lucked onto this meeting. I don't even know how I got here. I was going to so many Zoom meetings, and this one I ended up at, and turned out that Tuesday and Saturday nights coming to this meeting was like one of the bonuses of being locked up inside for COVID. I met so many new people and I learned so many new things. And I also, when I was asked to speak, I reminded myself of the eighth tradition that Alcoholics Anonymous is non-professional. I've heard some people speak here that are like dynamite. They're amazing speakers. Some of them, their background is in the arts, so they're really good at telling stories. And so I got nervous, right? And then I thought, oh my gosh, let's get back to the principles, right? When I'm telling my story, I start with step one. And step one is honesty. That's what's required. So this is my story, what I was like, what happened, and what I'm like now. Some facts to get out of the way to begin with. I'm going to be 59 in December. I've been married to one marriage, one man, and we just celebrated 30 years of marriage. There was a separation at around 7 years sober for me, and that's part of my story as well. And what else? I have a sponsor. I also have some really wise women and some awesome friends in AA because my sponsor's got a busy life too, and there's other people that I want to be able to reach if she's up to something else. I sponsor women, and some of those women are sponsoring other women, and their sponsees are even sponsoring women. So I think that's really cool. I have a group. I know my group. They know that I'm part of the group, and I have commitments weekly that keep me tethered really strongly to this program of Alcoholics Anonymous. My day starts on my knees. God, just help me to stay sober and try to help me to be useful in some way. That's the way I start my morning. And at night, I'm back on my knees and I just say thank you. And I started doing that right from the beginning when my sponsor suggested it, even though I had no idea what I was asking help of. I wasn't brought up with any particular spiritual bent or religious bent, none of it. And getting on my knees seemed really appropriate because I was so desperate to be relieved from the obsession to drink. And I really felt that position of humility, just on my knees saying, God, like, I need help. It just was, it felt right. And over the years and decades, and my sobriety date is January 15th, 1997. So over this period of time, that ritual, that practice, it takes on more and more meaning because, really what I'm pursuing here and what matters most is developing a personal relationship with the God of my understanding. And as I stay, it develops. And as it develops, I lose my fear. I lose my insecurities. I lose my neediness for attention. And I lose my need to always be in rigid control of things around me. And all those needs are based in fear, rooted in fear and self-centeredness. I didn't know any of that when I got here, but I've learned that by staying and keeping an open mind and being teachable. So what I was like, I mom and dad and a younger sister, and we grew up, I think, pleasantly lower middle class. Um, I thought we were rich. You know, we had, my mom was really pretty, is really pretty. My dad's good looking. They were a good looking pair. My mom's very fashionable, always in style, and she dressed my sister and I really well, like even down to the matching socks, the matching bows. Like if it was a day we were wearing purple and red, then we'd have purple bows and purple socks, and red might be the accessory color, on and on like that, right? I knew before I was 8 years old that after Labor Day, we don't wear white. That was one of the rules. And anybody young probably never heard that, but it was, it was one of the rules. And then of course, the other one is, if you go to a formal event and you wear a fancy dress, it's retired. You cannot go back to that event without having another fancy dress, because like everyone's going to remember the one that you wore the first time, which is insane, self-centered to the extreme. There are like 150 people at an event. They're not going to remember my dress a year later, but it seemed important at the time, and it was important until I was about maybe 5 to 10 years sober. I still had these old ideas circling in my brain. The family, though, on my father's side, something was different there. And, there's a history of alcoholism, and my father's an alcoholic. His side of the family, if you're not alcoholic, you married one. So there are a bunch of untreated Al-Anons in there too. My mom has mental health issues. She was awesome in many, many ways, but very much really needy, very, very insecure, and borderline narcissistic with some of the ways that she was damaged, and my dad also, through my work with psychiatrists over the years, it's like narcissist, right? And so two things happened when I was really young with all that going on in the house. I kind of parented my parents right from the start. No one told me I had to, but I really felt that they needed it. And the looking for love thing, I wanted my dad's attention. I wanted his love, but it's very hard with a personality with those characteristics. I understand now that first off, his world orbited around alcohol, and it also orbited around and still does himself and his needs. And so there were a lot of there were a lot of infidelities in their marriage right from the start, and that led to some the first breakup, right? Like my dad moved out west and we were home, and my mom was breaking down but going to work and doing all she did at work, and I was at home sort of helping to raise my sister. And then when my mom got home and would fall apart, I'd take over. I'd take care of her. Sometimes that meant I would put her clothes out for the evening, encouraging her to go play tennis, meet some people and help her out the door. And another thing was I found a card. I also cleaned the house like crazy, right? Like there was a night, I remember my mom's coming home from work. It's Friday night. I've cleaned the whole house. We had shag carpeting. That's another thing that's kind of period specific, but you rake the carpeting. And I remember raking it, knowing my mom was coming home. And my poor sister, I said, we got to wait here in the laundry room till mom comes home, so there are no footprints on the shag carpeting when she walks in the door. Around that time, I also found a note. I was reorganizing my mom's drawers, color coding everything as I would do. And I found a card, and it basically said, she was talking to her God, and it said, God, if it weren't for my daughters, I'd kill myself. And reading that card at that age and that time, I believed that was true. And later in recovery, when I was doing some deep work, I was asked the question, what if you said no to your mom? What if you set a boundary? And I said, well, she'd kill herself. And we had to work through that because it's not really true. That was just another story that I took on. And it really, it stayed in my heart for a long time. So I wasn't drinking, that early, but I'd been around it. I'd seen their parties and I saw what happened. And, I even had a couple of encounters with people at their parties who did really inappropriate things. Like one guy, I remember, he said, "Do you know what a donkey bite is?" And I was in my nightgown, about to go to bed, and this 50-year-old drunk man grabs my knee and he goes, "That's a donkey bite. Ha ha ha, isn't that funny?" And I tell my dad, and my dad's drunk too, and he's like, "Don't worry about it. He's just kidding around." And that's alcoholism, right? Like it's not, I mean, I'm sure that in a sober mind, he would have been really annoyed that his daughter had just been assaulted. But the where he was at, like the depth of that, he couldn't appreciate it. Um, I start high school, control. There's another thing. I was maybe not innately talented or smart, but I studied a lot and I did really well in school. And any sport I picked up, I went for it, all for it. And I became really good in cross country running, and I won some stuff for tennis. I played tennis until my mom started playing tennis, and then kind of became all about her. And so I stopped playing tennis, which is fine. It's also why I don't golf. When they started picking up golf and I was an adult, I was like, I'm not going through that again. No, thank you to golf. And I'm over that resentment. I still don't play golf. I love that my husband does. I think it's fantastic. I've gone on a lot of really cool trips because he goes to golf courses. And when you live in Canada and you want to golf in the winter, you have to go somewhere warm. So that's a really neat thing. But cycling back in high school, I did drink a couple times. And I remember it was really fun. It was really fun. And thing is that I had to keep that under control. And I had too many other things going on to, indulge in that kind of weekend behavior. I had cross country practice Sunday morning. So getting drunk Saturday night was, a no-go. The other thing is during the early teens, and maybe even uh, before that, I developed an eating disorder, and it's called anorexia nervosis. It's the most fatal mental illness in terms of mortality rate. And, there are a lot of, it's a combination of so many factors that disease was mine, became what I was doing. I think it's nature. I think it's like alcohol. I think part of it is, it's in the genes, it's in, how I was raised. But the point of saying that is I think that disease, that lethal disease, kept me in part away from picking up drinks earlier than I did. And in AA, I've learned to appreciate everything that's happened in my life. And the way I look at it is because of anorexia, I was avoiding the calories of alcohol. I was really diligent about the exercising, and I kept my brain clear enough to be able to achieve, not only good records in high school, but like valedictorian in university. And in law school, I was third in my class and won a couple awards. Now, doing that while starving, basically, and being really sick, uh, and in denial also about that, and not getting help, I look back on it now and I have some compassion for myself, but I only came up with that ability to have any compassion and to lose any shame around that disease. I only found that in Alcoholics Anonymous and the spiritual growth with the God of my understanding. My parents weren't capable of helping me. They had to know what was going on. They did know what was going on, but they also had their own diseases and their own things to be focused on. So it just persisted. Um, I drank a few more times and every time I drank it was kind of fun. And I just had these goals and other things that I had to get done. And so I never really gave into it, that idea about how much fun it was. And in law school, I remember one party, and it's interesting because it was a Halloween party, and we're at Halloween now. And I wore this great costume, and I went out. A rare occasion that I would go out with friends, and I got drunk on Halloween, and I trashed my dress, and ended up home. Early days though, so not a terrible hangover. I came back to school on Monday, and people were like, "Oh my gosh, you were so much fun on Saturday. You should come out with us more often." And I'm like, I can't, I just can't do it. But that was, I was reflecting on that. Like, part of me just wanted to get to that point where it was fun and just fun, and then stop, just get there and not go further. And, I just couldn't do it. And the more that I tested the waters of that, the more and more that started to become clear, and the bigger the consequences started to be. I graduated, I went to a great law firm. Again, I never actually thought about what I might like to do. Was this even a career that I wanted? Was this even a firm that I wanted to be at? I just did these things because people said it was the best thing. In my growing up, my dad said, there are no lawyers, no doctors in my family, like none. And that was my option. You either be a doctor or a lawyer. That's what they wanted for me. And I see the value of that. He wanted me to have autonomy. But I also see the problem with that is that I never even got a chance to ask myself, what do I really want? Is this even something that would make me happy? I never considered it. And I kind of lived that way up until I ended up in AA. And even then, that people pleasing and not having a sense of myself, needing outside things to define me, it lasted for a long time. So I found myself at this extremely competitive firm. Still sick with anorexia. Now I'm drinking more and more often. I do my Erkland year and then bar ads. And I learned a little bit there that, all I had to do was just pass. I met the man that would become my husband. And the way that he got through that, I mean, he took it really easy in school and in bar ads. And he encouraged me to do that. And now I had alcohol, and I was really tired. I was also really tired, My dad was, I think, married to his second wife or maybe third. My mom had a new husband now. There weren't all the boyfriends filtering through. That was also pretty chaotic. And I kind of relaxed a little bit, and I just kept drinking more and more. I ended up, starting my practice. The firm that I was at, again, another huge firm, and so much pressure, and I was so alone, and I was so scared. And I would leave and work out and want to drink. And what started happening was Thursday night was one of the nights to go out on a date and drink. My boyfriend before the one that I married he's in the restaurant business, and he used to say, this is another funny thing. I was with Tony for a bunch of years, where I could have, drank all the time. Like, he's in the restaurant business. So if we go to somebody else's restaurant, they'd be like, here, we're sending you, complimentary stuff. And Tony didn't drink much. And I didn't really either. It hadn't bit me yet. I was still very mindful of you know, how I react to alcohol. I wanted to be in control. And when I drink, I'm not. So that was kind of interesting. But he did tell me that, the tourists, sort of non-professional restaurant goers, come out on the weekends, and they come out on the holidays. The real drinkers, like the real people that dine out, come out on Thursdays. So I was like, there you go. Thursday night's my night to be out. And I'm not a tourist. I'm a real, chic restaurant goer. And I thought that was really special. And then, on the weekends, of course, it's like this place Friday night, that restaurant Saturday night, and then Sunday, brunch, right? Brunch. And you have to have champagne and orange juice at brunch, or Bloody Mary, or Bloody Caesar if you're in Canada. And then, little by slowly, I turned Sundays into Sunday night was ordering Chinese food and drink beer. And this became more and more, again and again. And my date nights turned into, I'm not so interested in this man that I'm being taken out for dinner anymore. I'm more interested in that bottle of wine, and it's getting low. And are we going to order another one? And if we aren't, then, can we just like get out of this place, and can I get home? Because I have a stash there and I'm going to keep drinking. And fast and furious. It says on page 33 of the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, to be gravely affected, one does not necessarily have to drink a long time or take the quantities that some of us have. It's particularly true of women. It was very true of me. My drinking was fast and furious. And it was, in a relative, my lifespan, I was like 28, 29, 30, and I was at the bottom of my drinking. I had a problem, and some people around me were in denial about it. I was in denial about it, but I had a serious problem very quickly. And so that's how I started operating. It was around alcohol. I was kidding myself that it didn't affect me at work, because Monday morning, I was really not all there. Monday morning, I was hungover, and I was tired and dehydrated and all the other things. And, Thursday night, I was thinking about my date night, going out Thursday night. And then most of the day on Friday, I was sort of just, the weekend was on. And so did it affect me at work? You bet it did. I couldn't get that honest until I did my inventory. I didn't really see that. So from there, what happened is I was still, still just very, very sick, with anorexia, and a lot, physical consequences are coming on. And I'm like, whatever, I don't care. I never wanted to have kids anyways. It doesn't matter. I have osteoporosis. I'm just gonna push that aside. I'm in my 20s. I'm still running. And like, that kind of should be a shocking thing. In my 20s, you have the bones of an 88-year-old woman, and this is not good. And I'm like, well, it's not affecting me now. So I go into this study, and I get put on some Fosamax or something that was brand new at the time, but it was supposed to help you with your bones. Whatever, I didn't care, but I cared enough, I guess. I was getting scared enough. and I decided to go inpatient to treatment for that disease. And the thing that sticks in my mind, this is how big my denial is that one of the things about going inpatient was that I wasn't going to be able to have any alcohol. And that bothered me. I didn't know I was alcoholic yet, but it bothered me. And now I think about that in a sane light, is if someone's told, you're going to have to, get a stent placed in your heart, or you're going to have to have this operation so that you can survive. I don't think, unless they had a problem with alcohol, they'd really be worried about going without booze for a couple of days. They'd be like, oh my God, get my surgery and, get me in there. Anyways, I did go in. I took a leave of absence from work. It was behavior modification. I wasn't ready for it. I left. I had learned a few new things. I left against medical advice. I did decide not to go back to the law firm. And I took a leave of absence there. They held my place for me for a while. And what I did in the meantime is I went back to school. I thought, you know what? Maybe I just should get another degree. So now I'm going on my 4th degree. I went back to school and I became a teacher, and I graduated top of my class, and I couldn't get work. And while I was doing all of that, my husband and I, who I met at the law firm, and he's still there. Like, he's an intense AAA dude who that lifestyle really suits him. But for him, I think, like, my drinking just kept increasing, and he was so busy with his stuff that it was easier for him to be in denial too. I finished school again, tried to get work, and then Vince and I got married, and we moved into our first house. I was having trouble getting teaching work, mainly because I would have to go in at a pay level that was above any of my experience, just because I had some degrees. And so that was really disappointing. At the same time, I was like, well, I'll just be a housewife. But really, my alcoholic brain is like, well, I'm just going to be a full-time drunk. And that 28 and 29, those years of my life just got smaller and smaller and smaller. And all the things that I had been interested slipped away. My shame at myself was immense. I wanted to show up for things, but I didn't want to be there because one of two things: I was ashamed of myself, or I knew that I wouldn't be able to drink the way that I wanted to. And the bottom was there. I've been in emergency rooms. I've been, in some really dicey situations. But I look back on that, and I know there was something watching out for me. My family wanted me to go to treatment. My husband wanted me to go to treatment. I went to treatment. I wanted to be good and not so bad. And I thought that was what this was about, good and bad. If I could use my willpower, I would do better and I'd be good again. And thing is that good and bad is not the issue here. It's I'm sick with the disease, and there's a solution. I wasn't getting that solution in the places that I was being sent initially, but I wasn't hearing it. I was just all, let's just get cleaned up here and go back out to life and just be a better girl. And fortunately, the treatment center that I ended up in for, let's say, the year of 1996, I call it my year in the woods, because I went to Donwood Treatment Center that had a loosely based AA program, and then I went to Bellwood, and then Homewood, and then Homewood again. And those places all had thank goodness, AA-based programs. And somewhere in that time, I started learning that people in that program drank the way I drank, and they no longer had to drink that way. And on top of it, some of them seemed happy. And some of them were living their lives a day at a time and not in constant fear. And I was like, I want that. I got some hope. You know, I didn't have hope with all the doctors and all the other methods that I tried before, because they couldn't work for me. There's a paragraph in the big book that talks about all the different things that we try. I tried all those things too, and none of it worked. But my final bit of time at Homewood, actually, I went back to Homewood, being I'm not going to tell that story. There's so many stories of the drunks. I want to get to the good stories. But when I left Homewood and ended up back in the city with my husband and family, and they're just like, okay, where are we going to send you next? Because I got drunk again, right? And I said, I just want to do AA. And I had enough exposure to it that I had a tiny bit of hope. And Labor Day weekend, 1996, I went into my first real on my own going into a meeting. At Homewood, we had to go to meetings. Now I was going on my own. And I walked in and I saw a speaker and I heard him and I was like, great talk. But also my marriage was pretty messed up at that point. And my family, one thing that you do if you're feeling uncomfortable is you get a new person to have a relationship with. And I saw this man, he told his story and it was attraction. The guy was handsome. And I went up to him after the meeting and I said, I'm newly back in Toronto. I'm hopeless. I've just been drunk again and I need help. And the guy was like, yeah, you do need help. I'm going to introduce you to someone. And right away, he had the program. He was not selfish. He knew that I wasn't going to learn anything from him. I was going to learn it from a woman. And so he introduced me to Colleen, my first sponsor, and we sat outside of the meeting on a bench and I cried and she cried a little and told me, here's a few things that, I want you to do. And being the academic and the student, I was eager. I was eager to be told what to do. And she said, get a group. You're going to join mine because you don't really have the capacity to understand what group to join right now. And if you join mine, you'll be seeing me. Get into service right from the start. You have no sobriety, but you can set up chairs and you can make coffee. She said, I'm your sponsor. She said, I want you to, even though you're not ready to do anything like sponsor, you have a day sober. So start talking to the newcomer when they come in and make that a part of your life. She said, I want you to call me every day and especially call me if you're thinking about picking up a drink. She also told me that part about getting on my knees to pray and start studying the big book and start studying the 12 and 12 meetings every day. My life had no routine and no structure at all. I got to AA. It was all about drinking. And so I like to have a schedule, and it was really easy to get into this AA schedule right away. Some people are unmuting, just thanks. And so that started to become my schedule. And the thing that I didn't listen to was when she said, if you start thinking about drinking, pick up the phone, call me. What I did with my ego and pride was I started thinking about drinking, usually around 3 or 4 weeks sober, because at that point, the physical was a little bit more settled and I was starting to feel like I cleaned up, the injuries of the last drunk were gone. And I'd start to think about, what have I done with my life? And I get afraid. And then I get angry. And then I would look in the future and I'd be like, I'd be so scared and I wouldn't share it because I thought, now I'm in AA, I should really start to get things together. And I think of a drink, and this all would happen like within, 60 minutes, it could happen. And then I'd start thinking of the drink, and then I'd be ashamed, and I wouldn't tell anyone. I certainly wouldn't tell her. And next thing you know, within 24 hours, I had a plan. I was drunk again. And I did that 3 or 4 times between 96 and my ultimate dry date, which was January 15th, 1997. AA always welcomed me back. In AA, I'm told we don't shoot our wounded. I also am glad that I got some tough love. And one of the members of my home group, she said, she was the group secretary, and she said, Kirsten, it's great that you're back. It'd be really nice to write your dry date in pen rather than pencil. I thought, that's kind of mean and kind of really, really true. And I love the welcome group for that. I love the group that for, getting me in service right away, making coffee. The last thing I wanted to do was to have to, look in somebody else's eyes and hand them a cup of coffee because I wanted to look down. I didn't want to be noticing. And so that piece of service was great for me. And the piece before that, the greeting, it was also really good for me because again, I didn't want to, I wanted to be able to leave early and show up late. And I couldn't because I had to shake your hand to welcome you in and then shake your hand when you left. And the good thing about it though is people started remembering my name just like I remembered theirs. And that started giving me a little bit of self-esteem. None of the awards or career things or races that I might have won or placed in did anything for my self-esteem or feeling actually useful like being thanked in AA has ever done. This has meant the world to me, and having a message that I can actually carry to others simply because I'm one of you. I've got this disease. And the ability to do that has been the greatest, it's the gold, it's the gift of recovery. So newly sober, I go through my steps. I understand step one, radical honesty. That me keeping to myself when I think that I want to pick up a drink was doing me no good. It was me refusing to accept the idea that I'm part of a we, that I need more than me in order to stay sober. Step two, the hope that I got in step two, again, just listening to people that had nothing riding on me in any way. Like, yeah, sure, over the years, some people they're in AA for reasons other than getting sober. They might like what I have, not in terms of my sobriety, but maybe, I could give them a lift, and that might be why they want to spend time with me. But for the most part, people are just, they want to give away. They want to make sure that I get a good message and I have a chance at being sober. That gave me hope. The insanity part of step two, no problem. I was not clear about many, many things. Step three, again, I didn't make a big deal of it. I wasn't worrying about, any kind of specific God. I was worrying about making the decision to do the next step. That was my decision in step three, that I would take inventory. And I also, that step three prayer, I figured, if God wants anything from me, he just wants me to be sober, he or she. That's what they want. They want me to not pick up that first drink. So I have a chance at recovery in any of the other areas of my life. And so I did inventory. I did it according to the book. And we set a time frame. And a couple of weeks later, after doing my resentments, my fears, my sex conduct, and my harm to others, I met with my sponsor and laid it out there. And that gave me a lot of integrity, being able to do that. I felt there was something in it. And fortunately, while I was doing my fifth step, she shared some of her stuff. And that gave me courage to share more of, those items that were at the very bottom, that there was it was kind of on my list, but I wasn't really sure I was going to share, including one that I actually, I left doing my fifth step and walked home and tried to do that thing which is suggested, spend an hour in meditation. And in that meditation, all I could think about was the one resentment and the one really shameful thing that I'd done that I hadn't told her about. So next thing I have to call her back and say, I got more. And, we did more. And more has been revealed. I was very sick when I got here. And a lot of things were very unclear. I've done 4 steps since. And, with time in the program, I've done specific 4 steps on things that, just it's with the constant step 10 and 11, the prayer, the meditation, and self reflection, that I'm able to come clear about what really is going on with me. Step 6 and 7, those are a daily thing. At the time, I did the best that I could. I was willing to, look at my defects and to ask God to help me with them. Some, yeah, I cling on to. And when I cling, I look at that and it's like, why am I still doing this? Why am I clinging to this? Well, because I'm still getting something from it. Simple as that. Step 8, amends step. I loved being able to do that. I will mention that doing step 8 is about forgiveness. And going on to step 9 without forgiveness, in my experience, has not been, I haven't been able to do the full amend. I've been able to do material amends. I've been able to, make amends with many people, including my husband, I think my sister, my father, but the one with my mom, I tried to do an amend with her, but I had something hinging on that. I wanted her to do one back to me. And when she said, she heard my amend and said, "Oh, darling, it's so great to finally hear that you understand how hard it was to raise you and how difficult it is to be your mom." I just got a new resentment and I hung on to that. And, it was a good 10 years of prayer and consistently, like, I did my living amends. I showed up and I got a little better, but the real amend didn't happen until about 10 years of sobriety, because I didn't have forgiveness in my heart at that point. I'm running out of time. Too bad. Let's see. One thing about making amends to my mother is, God has this great design. And what would happen as sobriety went on is my mom's husband ended up dying. At the time that he died, she had early dementia. Not really early onset, but she was in her 70s and she had dementia. Someone had to step up and start doing some really responsible things about her. And I've had to show up again and again. And I would not have been capable of any of it without the forgiveness. And, the beautiful thing too is in God's plan, he's been very, very generous. That a couple of those years, while she was on her decline, she was kind of innocent, and all the weapons that she used to use, and all these, all the ways that I felt judged and criticized with her, they evaporated. And I had some beautiful experiences and moments with that woman. Same with my sister, same with my husband. At 10 years of sobriety, I mentioned that my husband and I did separate, and that it needed to happen. He needed to do some work on his own stuff, just while I needed to do mine. And we got back together after we had both matured, I think, and grown up. And, and during that time when I was with him, I really took a deep look at myself. Like, what was it like for him to be married to me for those first 7 years of me being in AA? And what I found is my life was out of balance. I was all AA all the time. I was sponsoring too many people. I was busy in service. Service was basically keeping me from addressing many other defects of characters and issues that I had to take a look at myself. And we got back together at 10-year sobriety, and he actually gave me a new engagement ring. And he said, you know, this is because you're not the person I married. And I'm so glad that I'm married to you, that I had changed. And I take that to heart, because I can be really great, you know, for short periods of time, but what am I like at home, you know, 24/7? And what do other people see? And we have a very strong marriage. There's still challenges, but you know, it's rooted in acceptance and love. And I did say that, you know, 10 and 11 are where I live. Service is still what I want to do. I've been able to do jail work, lead step studies, travel to places and speak, come here and learn. I've learned how to use Zoom, something that I didn't want to do. I learned how to text because I have sponsees that's, you know, if I want to reach them, then I'm gonna have to text. I'm not on any social media, but I've learned how to do that. And I mean, there's so many gifts. I've been given the keys to the kingdom in Alcoholics Anonymous, you know, no kidding about that. And I think the last thing I want to say is one of the other reasons I love this group is because we are all about the traditions. And I'm very strong on that. You know, the message is about carrying a unified message about recovery and Alcoholics Anonymous. And thank goodness for the traditions, especially the 10th, especially the 12th, anonymity. And I think I'll end with that. Well, the last thing is just thank you, God, for keeping me sober this day. And I hope you've heard something. And if you haven't, go to another meeting. You can catch them in person, on Zoom. They're just out there. And thanks for listening.